In my previous talk, I left us with the idea that I gave these seminars at Princeton, and out of this came a book. Indeed, a book resulted from it, and the book was then the next step of my involvement with WorldShift, with the affairs and the future of humanity. This book was called A Strategy for the Future. It was published in the mid-1970s. And interestingly enough, it proved to be rather relevant even to today's times. Richard Falk, Professor Falk, wrote in his introduction to it, he says, Laszlo's approach concentrates on encouraging the participation of individuals and groups at all levels of social organization in the formation of a policy that is beneficial for the planet as a whole. That was indeed my hope, my intention. And then he added that Laszlo is trying to enlist as a matter of urgent priority the most creative and dedicated minds around the world in the collaborative work of building a new consciousness about the future of human society. That indeed has been already in the mid-1970s my ambition, my hope, and that is the particular objective that attracted the attention of Aurelio Peccei, the Italian industrialist who was the founder and president of the Club of Rome. I have been in touch with Peccei for some time then, since the beginning of the formation of the Club of Rome, but I have not been thinking seriously about doing work for the Club of Rome, writing one of their celebrated reports. But Peccei came to me and asked me if I would write a report on what he called the inner limits of mankind. The famous report of the Club of Rome, which was published already in 1972, dealt with the so-called outer limits. It was called the limits to growth. The question is, Peccei said, and I agreed with him, what are the inner limits? What kind of limits are there to human possibilities, to planning, to even to the resources of the planet, but not just the outer resources, or psychological resources, or cultural resources. So I wrote a little book called The Inner Limits of Mankind, to which Peccei wrote a foreword, and then this led in turn to a more bigger report, to a major report, an international one. And since I needed the collaboration for this report of researchers and research institutes in various parts of the world, Peccei suggested that I should go to the United Nations. At the UN, he made contact for me with the Institute for Training and Research, so-called UNITAR, and UNITAR offered a facility for me, offices from where I could communicate all over the world. At the time, there wasn't all these internet possibilities that we have today, so we had to use fax and phone, and sometimes the pouch, the diplomatic pouch, through the UN. And I spent a year at the United Nations working on a report which was then entitled Goals for Mankind. It was published then in the late 1970s, and it became well known all over the world with many different editions. This was then the next step, a step that I myself didn't expect, but it turned out because first Richard Falk discovered my work on systems theory, and then Peccei discovered my work on a strategy for the future. This had then led to further consequences and further involvements, and that will again be the subject of the next talk.